Hello, I am Arthur Duynhoven, and I work at irdeto. I'm going to talk a little bit about Jenkins Pipelines and how I use it a little bit as well. So, I'm going to go through a little quick introduction of myself. I'll talk about some the good, the bad, the ugly things we've seen, and then I'm going to go through several demos. And all this is also on GitHub, so you guys can try this later on the clip. And at the end, some Q&A. If you have any questions, don't hesitate to interrupt and ask. So, like I said, my name is Arthur Duynhoven. I've been living in the Netherlands for almost 3 years now. Previously, I was in Minnesota, USA. I've been working for irdeto for a little over 10 years now. And I live here with my girlfriend and my dog, Link, who's 10 months old. Oh. I've done a lot of different things with irdeto, the communications with operations, customers, solutions, and other cross teams. And my primary role is a software engineer. Some good things about Jenkins Pipelines: it's very flexible. You have pretty much free-form language, Ruby, to do what you want. You know, if the language supports it, you can do it. And if it doesn't, you can always pipe it to something else. You know, pipelines also give you a lot of reusability. Like you can have a shared library and share that code across multiple jobs, so you don't have to read code duplication. And another thing, if for taking jobs, you can version it in your SCM, source control. And so it's very nice. So if you upgrade to a new version of, say, Java, you're going to Java 9, and now you have to do a patch in the old one, you can easily go back to the previous job, or even further back, Java 5 or something. I don't know. Another good thing is Jenkins also provides a lot of documentation and code snippets. You know, they're doing their best, and there's a lot of good information out there from them. We can look at that a little bit later. And their nice thing is they have plugin for using Docker with your pipelines, which is very nice. You like Docker.
As in Docker build slaves?
What?
As in Docker build slaves?
The workflow Docker pipeline plugin.
Docker plugin.
Yeah. No, it's the pipeline Docker plugin. Okay, it's from CloudBees.
I don't know that one yet.
Okay. Well, that's nice. Maybe it's the same thing now. Some of the bad things. You know, if you're not writing Java or Ruby, like say you're natively a PHP or Python, you know, it's a new programming language, so you're going to have to learn that. The developers may not be as comfortable. And yeah, so instead of trying to leave all the responsibilities on a specific team that manages all the builds, you can shift that over to the developers themselves, so they actually know what's going on during the build process.
What kind of language is Groovy? Is that sort of Java?
Yes, it's so close to Java. It's pretty much an extension. So if you're familiar with Java, you'll be pretty comfortable with Groovy.
And Jenkins have a code generator, right? So you can generate snippets.
So they have some snippets for the Jenkins pipeline stuff that they add. So for different plugins and stuff, you have the Jenkins methods internally. So they give you a nice little snippet for that. And yeah, another thing that's kind of not so good is for normal people that are building, it's a different way of thinking for your jobs. You know, usually you say I have one job for just the build. I have a separate job for just the testing and a separate job for something else. In pipelines, you can string that all together and say one, and do it all in one. And you can take some shortcuts. You don't have to think about it. Like there's different dependencies. You just say, this is my whole life cycle of my product, from initial development to the final testing to production if you're really good. Another bad thing right now is plugin compatibility with the old legacy non-pipeline jobs. They're still working on that quite a bit. They've done quite a bit in the last year. And look at this, but doesn't. They keep track of what they're planning to create and update and what they already have. So you see a lot of basic SCM stuff and a lot of these build steps. you don't have one for Maven, they have some issues with certain plugins, so they have to think a little differently, and some take longer. So not everything's supported, so if you're trying to migrate to pipelines, you might have to find some workarounds to fix your issues or run what you're used to.
Maybe I talking about Jenkins 2.0 or before that version?
Well, pipelines is available before 2.0. You can install the same plugins.
The same plugin which is now
Yes.
part of 2.0.
Yeah, so pipelines works in both 1.6.5 or something and later. So in, I think, 2.0, it usually comes pre-installed, or that's one of the recommended plugins. But in pre 2.0, you can still download it and use the same plugins, the same views. So if you want to test it out in your local Jenkins, you can easily do that. 2.0 is not required. And of course, Jenkins has also has their own bugs. So you can find a lot of their bugs there. There's a lot of little quirks that you'll find, and some are quite easy fixes in some of the plugins or their source code themselves, but they don't always want to merge your merge request quickly because they want to make sure it doesn't break other things or that it's fully tested correctly in the correct way. So that's always the bad thing. Even worse, Duynhoven. You have some functionality that does not support it yet. A plugin or some custom logic you want, and pipelines is important natively. So what you end up doing is either doing your own build of the plugin, which then can break once you update again later on, or you find some hack solution and you do it to the shell, or you do some weird logic in your job itself to get around that issue. And I can show you a couple of those things as well.
But you can trigger another jobs from pipeline jobs, right?
Correct.
And they don't have to be pipeline jobs.
No.
So this is the workaround.
So yeah, but you really want to say, start my first half of my pipeline doing this, and then do the rest in the old freestyle job. I don't know if you want that, but it's also it's a possibility. You can have the pipeline say, wait until this external job is done, and come back. But then you're also probably checking out the code twice, or depends on your scenario. Another thing that's kind of difficult is testing the job configuration itself. The best way of doing it is use the inline, not from the source control, and just test on a test Jenkins bed. Otherwise, you're constantly committing to change, run your build. Commit a change, run your build, and it's really hassle if you're not familiar with pipelines and some of the caveats.
So what you will do is you edit the Groovy script inside of Jenkins, trigger our changes,
Yes.
when you're done, submit it to the Git repository.
Correct. So, do a lot of that. Jenkins says they're trying to provide a better way of doing the testing of the configuration itself, but I don't know how soon that'll be. So they also recommend doing that approach. Just do it in Git Jenkins itself, and then once you feel comfortable with it, then put it in your source control. All right. So the first thing I want to talk about is the setup of this demo using Jenkins and Docker and Job VSL. So right now I installed Docker for Mac on my laptop, and I'm going to use a stock image of Jenkins. Well, kind of stock. I'm going to add some of my own plugins so it's pre-installed, so I don't have to do it during setup time. I'm going to use my laptop also as the Jenkins slave node, which has Docker installed. I'm going to use Docker containers for every build process and testing. So I don't have to have a specific node to test or build a PHP project or a Java project. I can just say I'm going to have either an official image of Docker from a Docker Hub for Maven and use that for all my Java builds, or if I need a custom build, I can host that locally. Say this is my custom build node for X project or something. And in the initial setup, I'm going to use Job DSL, just kind of say these are my basic configuration of my jobs, And the only configuration there is saying that I want to pull from this repository, do it as a pipeline job, and for any merge request branch builds, I want to do a multi-branch pipeline job. And then I rely on Jenkins credentials to do the actual authentication of other repositories, so nothing's committed in source code. And yeah, all this is on GitHub under irdeto-jenkins2. So, I can't think of it. So, I created a custom. Taking a stock image of Jenkins, the Alpine, because it's just smaller and lighter weight. And I'm going to add my custom plugins. And I wrote some just some shell scripts just to auto-generate based on a template of my job configurations. And if you want to look closer at that, essentially this is my template. I say I have per repository, I'm going to have a pipeline job and a multi-branch job. And I'm just doing string replacements. So I just have a list of key value pairs, and then this is just going through it and just replacing different values. So nothing special.
So the reason that you have two types, one is just for master, the other one is to
For
have
branch builds,
branch.
yeah. So you can keep them separate if you like. You don't have to, but you can set up an individual multi-branch pipeline job and just have a special case in there for master. You know, it's almost the same, just have a little different visibility for people that want to manage it.
And why are you using the string replacement and not just Groovy variables?
Because I want to be able to use, so if I look at, for example, I want to be able to pass in for my release job a different branch. So in case I'm doing a patch release or something like that, I want to say, instead of doing it from master, I want to do a patch release from 2 releases ago, so I can help customer X on site. But there's a bug in Jenkins, which they're working on it. Actually, it's in progress, so that means it should be done soon. So, yeah. So that's why I have just probably the main reason I did hash is because I was using Vagrant a lot, and they use hash for their Ruby logic. So one other thing I do here, I insert into the startup script for Jenkins just to say create my C job, which just executes my script to say create the initial job DSL job, so I can run it later. And I switch back to Jenkins, and this is all documented in Jenkins that you can specify plugins and it installs it automatically. So I have all these dependencies. It looks more than it is, but during the build process, it downloads all this and makes it pre-installed. So I could do not for build, but it's all cached, so it's going to go fast, so that's fine. So it's going through, if you're familiar with Docker, so it's going through, blah, blah, blah. Last thing that takes the longest is just downloading the plugins, because it actually has to go back to the internet and download and cache them. So once that is started,
Just a question, on a clean machine, this would take around...
clean a minute and a half. That doesn't take long. I could change something.
I miss green balls.
What?
Green balls plug in.
Green balls.
Green is good.
Oh yeah,
Instead of the blue ball.
Yeah. So, yeah.
That's that green inside, yeah.
But anyway, I won't change it. So, and then we can run configuration container I just created. Probably move the old one.
Oops, yeah.
So it's just going to start. And again, this is all all this information's in this README. It's also in. Talks about a little bit about it. You can run it, build it, and then a few things I'm going to do after this is up and running is I'm going to pre-populate some credentials so I don't have to do it later during the build process. And add using GitHub for this, so I'm going to configure the GitHub API and the global configuration just so I can scan my projects. So as soon as this, so you see all these errors, essentially Jenkins gives you this, password in the logs, always you get it from the Docker container itself or whatever process you're running if you're not using Docker. You see some of these errors here. Essentially my script is trying to pull Jenkins until it's ready, and we're getting 4.3 because it's not fully up ready. And at the end, we see, okay, they finally accepted a connection. They made a CLI request to populate my C job. So let's refresh this page. Now we see Jenkins 2.0 startup page. So I'm going to paste that in there. So we can copy it right. And then next step is to install plugins. But we already did that with our custom Docker file. And it's just going to start. So now I create my job with QSL. I can actually look at it and see what it looks like. Pretty much it's just the template posted in here with a PartTime Job, monthly branch, and then another PartTime Job branch. And all these are, it's just saying, I'm taken from source control, git, here's my address, and use these credentials ID. Now, wipe out workspace, so you have clean workspace in the beginning, branch, and just use the standard Jenkins file in source control. And I added some parameters so we can manage major minor version. And I just have it trigger check every 5 minutes for polling, in case so we don't have no one has to really manage this. For branch ones, this configuration is using GitHub. Pretty much I'm saying only do merge requests, but you can extend this to say just build everything, even the master branch. And I also say use these different credentials and just give it a name. So it's just repeated for 3 jobs that I configure. So first thing I'm going to do is just going to add credentials, so the demo goes a little easier. And we give a token. You should be able to strip this down to less credentials, but I guess. Got 4 credentials there. Another thing I'm going to add is the build node that has essentially my laptop. So let's add the build node. So we call it Docker host. To put in a directory that's a create directory that exists. I'm going to give it a label so I can specify it in my pipelines to say run it on this node. And now it's going to do check through SSH, confirm my IP, copy. Alright, I have my credentials there. So save it. I'm also going to just manage Jenkins. So now I'm going to add the information in global Jenkins for GitHub. Don't need GitLab internally, use GitLab, so and GitLab server. Finish my tokens. That's all I need for that. I'm going to do one other thing for later. I'm just going to disable authentication for the UI, just so I don't have to worry about anything else.
And this will be done while building the Docker image?
The Docker image, you could, at the end, you could probably script to say, use a Jenkins CLI to do all these things, but I wouldn't, you have to provide those credentials somehow. So you could do it during the runtime, probably. Just mount your credentials to a location on the server or do it that way. So now I have everything set up, so I'm just going to run this guy. And this guy is going to just, in the end, this is just a throwaway job for a new instance of Jenkins. So this is just the job DSL running. And soon it will. Alright, all the jobs, I'm done. So now we go here. Now we have pipeline job and the multi-branch pipeline job. So all those are there. So they will run. So that essentially is the setup. How I'm using Docker and Jenkins just to initially install. So first I'm going to go over just a quick basic sample of Hello World with the pipelines. I'll just talk a little bit about stages, nodes, how to check out. You can do any inline Groovy, a little bit follow or archive. Again, the source is here. And for people that want to read up on a little bit more tutorials, also have a tutorial, which is also a good link. It gets you going on the basics. Also by Jenkins, so they always update it with every release. So you can see a lot of different things. If you're familiar with this, you can't see it. So we have the tutorial, which is my pipeline. Some of the same things I was saying earlier. And I give you even demos and all this other information. Quite handy for if you're just starting. And I also have best practices link. Some do's and don'ts. So these are all things you can do. One thing I found out the other week is this handy thing. For when you check out code from your source code, you can just say SCM. Previously, you actually had to recheck the code entirely, which is kind of cumbersome because then if you're doing a merge request, you'd also have to recreate that configuration on the job configuration level and within Jenkins file itself. But now, if you have it all within SCM, they created an SCM shortcut, so it makes our lives quite a bit easier. To look, I just have a simple Jenkins file. So, they say put Groovy on, so your ID can recognize that it's Groovy code, give you a little bit more help, but it's not needed. Stages are kind of like you can almost think of them as areas of code. So you may have a testing stage or a build stage or integration testing or load testing, whatever it is. Based on how you're currently doing it, you could probably put each individual job to say this is stage X or stage Y into a pipeline. And there's certain things you can do outside of the node. So like simple Groovy logic and some stages and stuff like that. But if you need to do any actual logic, like check out code, doing building, you actually need to do it on a given node. So in here, we're just saying, grab a node. I don't care if it's the Docker host or anything, just grab any available node. going to do a checkout of source control. I have some logic here in Groovy that just says I'm going to generate my version number, whatever it is, based on if it's released. You can also do it based on the branch name. So if it's a master, you just say, do it this version. Otherwise, if it's not, you can give it a different name. So in our branch builds or pull requests, we want internally we do a different versioning scheme. We just give it almost like a beta build, but we use the branch name as identifier. And yeah, and after we generate that, we just write a file and archive it. Pretty simple. So you can see that it's probably already ran. Yep. So we saw the stage, start sample stage. We got code checkout, version handling. You can see here that things are archived. You can see it here. So 0.0.1. All right. And pipeline. I don't know if you guys are familiar with this, but you can look at logs. Hello world. Go check out. See the same thing. And you can see the different steps. Write file. No output, but you see the stages or the steps that in the thing. If we looked at the full console output, you can see this first part is the code checkout to get the job configuration of the job, the Jenkins file. And after that, it goes down to you actually start the sample stage. Or actually starts through pipeline and goes through. We saw all this already in our logs, and that's a real high-level, simple workflow. All good?
So on the job configuration, you just configure
So,
the location on
yeah.
your Jenkins Groovy script is.
Yeah, so we said, if you see these are parameters we set in our template. And here, it's pipeline. You do from SCM, specify get, the URL, the credentials ID, which selects in the drop-down, the branch, and any other extensions. And this is the script path. So if you have more than one pipeline in your source code, you can change it here. My project, Jenkins file, or Jenkins file, my job configuration. Doesn't matter what it is. You can put any path in here you want as long as it resolves to a valid pipeline in your code source.
But if you're using that shorthand checkout SCM, does it redo the checkout procedure, or it copies what was checked out on the?
Internally, Jenkins got smart and they're just copying it. They still go through the steps, but it's like cached for them, and they just copy it. So if you look at the initial checkout, it might take 30 seconds to a minute. If you look at the second checkout in your pipeline, it takes less than a second. It's just same.
So when you use checkout SCM, it means that you have your Jenkins file running for the same social repository.
Yes.
Which means that your branch job can actually be running a Jenkins branch configuration.
Yes. So we'll talk about that in a little bit. So next. So this is the basic one. And the next one, I'm going to do a little more complex Jenkins file that uses Docker for building, some testing, and I'm going to use a Docker container that has Maven installed on it. It's from the official image from Docker Hub, and kind of talk a little bit about how to handle your Docker lifecycle in Jenkins build. And this is also on GitHub. Source first. So, sample project is just a Java app that has embedded Jetty on it. That's pretty much just hello world. That's all it's doing. So first I have a Jenkins file. I'm just declaring some variables on top, so I just have global scope. Otherwise, if you do it within a given node, it doesn't have scope outside something else. So you don't always need this, but sometimes you do.
Just in case, for example, you want to pass the version number for a different part of the
Yeah.
node.
So in this example, I'm going to use multiple nodes. You can see here, I'll just say 3 sections. So I'm using version in both this section, and this section, and this section. So if I only declared it in this section, it doesn't have scope outside that. So here I'm just specifying in our stage to say I'm going to prepare my build Docker container. And I'm just going to use a label, using Maven, using 3.3.9 with JDK8. And you can specify this if you're using a custom repository. So if you have a custom build Docker container, you can use with registry and point to your internal one or to your private cloud one, whatever it is, and it uses that.
So just one question. If you define variables, like these global variables, then you trigger classic Jenkins job. Will this build, will the external build have these variables like injected as environmental variables?
Well, it's more of a Ruby, like a programming scope. But the thing is, in the parameterized builds, Jenkins injects them as a global variable in Ruby. So in, which I'll show you in a little bit.
Okay.
But yeah. So yeah, this is more just on the scope, not as build parameters. These are not build parameters. But say that you want to use shared libraries later, you may just say just pass in a Docker build node and let the shared libraries handle the rest type thing. So here I'm just saying just use this standard Docker Hub. And here, Docker is the built-in logic from Jenkins through the Docker pipeline plugin. And you can just say, give me an image with this name, and it gives you back a handle with that name. And you can then pull it, tag it, push it, whatever you want, because it's just essentially it's wrapper around a Docker daemon.
For the Docker, if you use your own Docker
registry?
does it support credentials?
Yes. So optionally, the second parameter here is credentials ID. So here you can do the same thing we did with our source control checkouts. You just provide an ID here, and then that'll
pick it up from
correlate
Jenkins.
to that. One thing with previous to Jenkins 2.0, the credentials hides the ID field. So you have to go to advanced and actually type it there. Otherwise, it gives you a random GUID, and it changes every time. So make sure you do that. So then that here is just another built-in function from the Jenkins current working directory. It doesn't work in all string substitution, so I see it here. Essentially, it's just a workspace. So now I have this build image. And there's a few things we can do with this build image. We can do commands inside, we can run it and just let it run. But for me, I want to just run the build steps inside of it and let it automatically close. I don't want to worry about cleanup or anything like that. So that's where inside comes from. If I look at, I will open up job here. We have pipeline syntax. So this is going back to documentation. We have different steps here. This is the code generator. So if I want to change dir, my dir, it tells you what you have to write. So there's a lot of this stuff in here. There are some plugins that will show up that do not work correctly. I'll talk a little bit about that a little bit later. But you can also look at some global variable references. So this is where that comes from. So this also gives you a lot of documentation on what you can do without knowing much. With registry, the server, so if you have a remote Docker daemon that's open to TCP connections, you can use that here. With tool, image, so I'm just saying, give me an image, specify the name of the image, and I got it image back. And the image object is down here as well. talks about what you can do. Run, with run, inside. So run just runs, and it's like a run in background. With run does, like inside, but it closes. Yeah, inside, but all the commands inside that are run on the host, not inside the container itself. So inside does the actual inside the container. Yeah. So you have all these different things. The environment, so that's just that. So inside this container, I'm going to check out the code again. So there's my lovely SCM, because it's already checked out to the job configuration. And I had the same version logic here. Don't just for release builds, I want this name convention, or I want to set certain variables for different repositories or something like that. And then I'm going to build. I left out the deploy step in my command, but if you have some deployment, you can deploy your artifacts using Maven here. You can use the with credentials. It's the same thing. You can do it based on name value pair, or just together, or something else. And you just give it credentials ID, and then in your configuration Maven step, you just say use this variable, and it's all hidden from the logs. So it's all star, star, star. So that's also nice. And you can say this is my variable. So I'm not doing that step. So since we don't have a Maven plugin yet, I'm just executing the shell, saying Maven, update my version to this new version. So it's going to update my POM and set the new version. And then I just say, do a clean install. I'll omitted the deploy, but as you see there, and otherwise I deploy to that server based on the credentials. One thing to think in mind is some of these builds, especially Maven, is going to download dependencies, a lot of them. And same with like PHP Composer and other software. So a lot of times you want to cache those. And depending on the container you use, it might not be straightforward. For example, the Maven image that they provide in Docker Hub, it's not straightforward. So internally, Maven looks for the current user, and if you can't find it, depends on how you run your container. So it comes back with a question mark. So if you look in your workspace, you'll see a question mark in there, and then your Maven.m2 directory, and then all your repositories. So I found a workaround, or my nice hack, is I mount a directory on my host. This is essentially directories down from my workspace, which is Jenkins Home, in this example. And I say mount the repository under this directory on the Docker container itself. And in my Maven, I can just say override the user home to cache. So that will utilize the cache. So when my second run, it'll have the cache for the Maven dependencies. After that, we'll have a new stage. We'll do some component testing. I'm going to do that for the demo. And then I'm going to save some of my artifacts for later. There's a difference between archive and stash. Archive will actually store it like you typically know and exists in Jenkins. You just say artifact, archive this. Stash is like, I'm going to save it for your job in a temporary location. So if you have a different build node, totally different OS or host, you can just say unstash from there. So you don't have to worry about, oh, it did already archive and pull it down from archive. That's complicated. So stash is just saying, it's similar to get stash, save it for later. And so I'm just going to do my binaries, artifacts. After that,
You inside the Docker image, but the simple stash command extracts artifacts, or
it's
so volume which
yeah.
command?
So if you look at, I'll look at the output of this Jenkins job. So you can see here all the dependencies. But when you start, you see that this is the Maven Docker container. By default, Jenkins will add a username. This helps for security and stuff like that. There's a new update that will allow you to omit that. But essentially, set running a Docker container. It doesn't know what user it is, but it mounts the current workspace. So here's my workspace. So pretty much you have, inside the container, you have read-write access to your workspace only. And then here's event variables that are set.
Well, it's the same way you can retrieve Maven, not Maven, but unit test logs.
Yeah, you can get logs. So once you exit out of the container, your workspace will still have all the new files that the build process created, so you can still access it from there. In some cases, you might have some container that puts logs outside of the workspace. And if that's the case, then you will have to execute a copy command to the container using Docker copy, essentially, to say, just bring it to my local workspace. Just another workaround hack that's not really supported on some of these steps. So yeah, here's our checkout. Close that, and then now it's the reversion down dependencies. Lovely. All those dependencies for a simple Hello World project. And
it's simple.
yeah. So here we have. So now it's done. It's going to stop the container automatically and remove it, so it's no longer on my host. We've got the point staging, not needed, and then we're stashing. We stash two files, the dependency jar and the standalone jar. Dependency jar has the embedded Jetty in it as well.
The image still exists.
The image still exists. The container does not. So that's something a little bit later. So you see it.
Just a question. So for example, that first step actually could be something that you were going to use in several pipeline jobs.
Yes.
The build command.
Yes.
So, you could have this as a different Jenkins job that you just import here.
So the idea is if you want to use code, you're going to want to use the global libraries of Jenkins Pipeline. Now, I'll briefly touch on that later. Essentially, you can put shared code there, and then it will act like Docker is. So you have access to Docker. So in a shared library, you might have Maven utilities or Maven item. So you can do maven.build and then just pass in the arguments. And it depends on how you construct that shared library. So after that, so also on the Docker build, we're going to build a container so we can reuse this in other environments for regression, load testing, or even production if you're doing production-ready containers. We can see this is just a simple Docker file. I'm using Alpine Linux with Jerry 8, really lightweight. It's like 50 megs. And Docker now supports runtime variables, runtime build arguments. So I can pass the version and grabs that dependency, puts it. And my command is pretty simple. It's just job-jar, my jar. So real simple. So after that, it builds it. I just have a handle on it, so I can do something with it if I wanted to right away or not. I can deploy it, tag it. So here I'm not going to do that because I don't want to deploy this stuff anymore. So this is just an image object with documentations. You can say tag and push it. You can specify versions. I'm not going to do it for now. You can do integration testing. I'm not going to do it now. Alright, so after that, I wanted to do some load testing. Some lightweight load testing just to make sure my applications still talk together correctly. But for a real load test, you want an actual environment for this, unless you're doing something Docker. So, as you saw earlier, my node had Docker host and load test as labels. So you can specify complex requirements in the node. So if you have a build process or job that needs to do it on Java 8 and Stern OS or something like that, you can do that here. Or if you don't care, or you can do like more. No, I want to do it in one of these. As long as it was supported, then I can do it. Or if it's 64-bit versus 32-bit type thing. So I'm going to have a new stage, load testing. I'm going to have my sample service container. So I'm actually going to start that container. There was a bug with using the GitHub public repository. It added library to my name. I don't know why. So it broke my simple pull. So now I just reset. I just create a new instance of it and get a handle on it. And for my load, I'm just using Apache Apache benchmark. Just some simple Rust tests. So first, I'm going to start. One thing I'm going to do first is throw in a try-catch so I can clean up my running containers later. So first, I'm just going to run my sample service that I just created, and then I'm going to run inside the load service this. Just AV command just to do a million requests in to my hello world, and I link my container so it knows the IP addresses of that, so I don't have to worry about linkage. Another thing you can do is create a separate network layer for this build, and then you can rely on DNS resolution. So,
does it support Docker Compose, or do you actually have to manually link everything together? So could you actually provide
you
a
could
Compose
run
file?
a Docker Compose, but Jenkins itself does not support it directly yet. So you could go to the shell and say run this. So you could do that. So I'm just going to read the file, just read the file, and then stash it, so I can maybe use later. Just print it to the output logs. And if there's any errors, I want it to print it out and mark the build as failure. And finally, I want to stop my containers that are running. So if we look at that, we can see building the container, or sample service container. It's done. It spins up all the containers. You can see the load test. Stash the file. And here's the output of the log. So we got almost 20,000 requests per second. That's decent for and you can see the pipeline here. Let's do full view so you can see a little better. You can see all the different stages. And say that you want some manual intervention or some manual approval step. You can add that under input. So our load results good enough. If I really want, I can look at the log and see. Looks good enough to me. So let's approve that. Proceed. If you abort it, it just cancels the job and turns gray. So now I want to go into a step. I'm going to tag my repository and do my Docker deployment as latest tag or whatever else you want to do. Looking at that section, one thing is maybe I only want to do this section, last step, if it's a release build. So I'm going to do that. I also need to check if the build is failed or not, or unstable. So usually if it's no, that means nothing's failed, it's still successful. But depending on some plugins, they may change the result to success. So one thing you will have to do if you want to do continue logic based on the outcome of pre-existing logic, you will have to check for both cases, no or success.
Question: If you have multiple builds waiting for approval,
They just sit there pending.
they sit there and pending.
Yeah, I recommend not. Maybe you only want to do that if you wanted to deploy something to some staging environment or something like that.
Yeah, but imagine that you want to deploy something for a staging environment, and then you do 20 commits, and the one that was supposed to approve the deployment was having lunch, so it comes back and has 20 builds to approve.
Yeah.
They will be all stuck there.
Yeah, they're all sitting there waiting.
Because in Jenkins currently, if you have two builds on the same job, if the first build doesn't end, the second one doesn't end.
So one of the best practices for this, if you do an input stage, do not do it inside the node. Because in Jenkins Pipelines you have two types of nodes. You have a lightweight executor, which is essentially just the master doing just some outside of these build nodes. Then you have the heavyweight executor, which is everything inside the node. So for input, if you actually put this input inside a node, you actually can take two up. You're going to take the lightweight one and the heavy executor of the node. And that's the issue you'd see. So if you keep it out, you don't have the issue because it's just a pause. And you don't have to worry about it.
Yeah.
So my last stage, I want to tag and promote a container and possibly something else. Kick off an external job or archive something, deploy something. So you can, since I'm not in any specific order anymore, I just do the last parts all together. So I can do it in parallel. In this case, I can say, in this node, make sure the source control is local, and there's no Git plugin for this stuff. It's only for checking out Git. You can do stuff. So the workaround that I've done is I use SSH agent, and I just configure remote URL to 0. So this is the bad hack, but it's hard to get around this. Depends on how you build your job. You might not have to do this part, but yeah, I'm manually tagging and then manually pushing. So, little hack. And then also doing docker tag. Usually you probably want to pull it to make sure it's local. It's done on a different host. And then you just say tag and push. Push that tag. So if you're using latest tag for anything, or stable builds or something, you can do that. And then lastly, I'm just doing archive, just unstash the results and archive them. Just to, if you're using Jenkins as any type of storage.
Anything that hasn't been stashed is going to be lost.
Yes. So one thing that does not work under parallel are stage names. So you can't have inside, and Jenkins will actually warn you if you try. They're coming out with labels, but I'm not sure how those are going to work, so we'll see. Going back to, you can see that. So you can see the build took 1 minute and 38 seconds. I'm just going to build the second one just for giggles manually.
What will be displayed under that parallel stage? Because you define a stage before or on parallel. Will it show all the steps that it executed?
So,
or not?
It will show you all the steps, but it's in no specific order.
Okay.
So you can see the checkout there for one of the steps.
Well, at least you can do some.
Yeah, you can see it, but it's obviously not in the order that you think because it's just in parallel. So sometimes it's still mixed. But the thing I want to show you here is, this should take roughly 1 minute and 38 seconds, but you can see that it's not downloading any dependencies and it's passed. So now we shaved off a minute of download time just by having that cache. So that's always a nice thing to have.
But would not result in less reliable results if you have a Docker cluster? Because every machine has a different set of cache.
Yes. So yeah, if you're on multiple machines, it's still up to that machine to have it cached. Same with Jenkins. If you have old way, if you have several nodes, same nodes, each of them will not have cache until it gets built by job. So, but if you have one node, it's straightforward.
Where does it actually store the stashed items? Are they actually staying in the workspace on the node it happened to run on, or are they going back to the master? Or?
They must go back to the master because they can unstash them to any other node. Or any part of the
memory.
Is it in state memory?
Yeah. I saw it blow up to like 12 gigabytes
Sorry, they stay in memory on the master.
Yeah.
Ouch. Don't put anything big in there.
Did not know that.
Don't try this at home.
Alright. Oh, it's getting late.
Actually, just to take a pulse, you still have how many demos?
Well, the multi-branch one is real simple. I just want to show you that it actually merges and what it looks like. So that'll be pretty simple. And then I want to show you the shared library quick. And then back to that stuff. Okay. So I'll just show you those two quick. Yes, take more longer than I thought. So I'll show you our hello world. Well, let me run this. So this is run. Branch indexing. It's going to run. I have a pull request in. It failed for some reason. Connection refused. Anyway, idea. See that it pulls, scans all the different repositories or branches and attaching a file, then it qualifies. And I'm just going to rebuild it. Just to show. So here, you can see that it's essentially merging master commit into the pull request commit. And then in my merge quest, we have now, so I added now from merge. Look quickly at that. So if I create a new merge quest, it'll trigger it. The only thing I did was, so you can see that this is the Jenkins file, not something else in the repository. So you actually will see the changes on the job configuration itself in this. And it's good if you're making new changes to your build process or something like that. Yeah. Lastly is global library, which is also information on that in. Also from Jenkins. It talks about it. It's all groovy. They tell you how to structure it. You know, it's just groovy, similar to Java. But in the end, you can instantiate these classes inside your Jenkins file, Java, by doing things like this. Actually, no, it's not. Like this. So you might have a class under workflow, and you have method on it, checkout from something. So this is where you could do your shared logic and call your Java
Doesn't
script.
need to be on the same SCM. It can be
Yeah, it's totally separate SCM. This talks about how to get it there. And so you can do something like this, you know, instantiate the object and then say checkout from. If you want to get down to, say, that Docker type of usage, that you do it under vars. You may have a class. If it's a single method, you just do a call, and then you just do hello world. But if it's a multi-definition library, you can have multiple different items. For example, so I might have some example for my Docker utils. So if tag exists, I'll pass this stuff in, pass variables, tag latest, I'll abstract some of this logic out. You can easily do that. This is using different registries here. So one example I was going to show you was to abstract the language logic into shared libraries and then update your job to use that. Essentially, it's so I'll create job, I'll show the change. So essentially, that's different. It's not updated it. But down here is and it's a bad example. Not the right image. But so here, it's called version utils that generates, and then we pass in the variables. So instead of having the if-else duplicated in multiple jobs, you just call the shared library. And another good thing is, in the shared library, you can provide text files or documentation so everyone sees it. Here, you can see markup. Jenkins says they support markup, but they're escaping everything. So if I push Jenkins, so I just pushed, it's an empty repository by default, so you need to populate that. You can use, I'm just using this since it's insecure. So now my Jenkins job, if I go to global variable reference, I will see my version utils.
Okay, so that's the internal Git of Jenkins.
The internal Git of Jenkins, yes. Which is another bad thing, but you can set up some job to replicate that every now and then if you really want to automate it. But there are requests out there to have this as an external repository. So we'll see how long it takes them for that. The last, and you can't really test too much on the global library either, unless you have unit test in a separate language. So one thing you need to worry about is if you're using Docker, you're going to have to be concerned about disk space, because you're going to have a lot of old containers, images, or old images laying around. And you can easily set up a Jenkins job on a weekly basis, on a weekend, on downtime, to say just delete everything, or delete everything that's not used, and that's just simply doing shell commands saying docker rm dash or rmi dash whatever. And if you use Vagrant or VirtualBox, you know, the VM disk also stick around, so you may want to clean those up if you're trying to spin up any Windows environments or anything like that. Yeah, also don't forget to clean up the volumes, because those are also persisted after a container dies.
For the Docker cleanup, there's the docker-gc Docker image, which does all the Docker cleanup.
Yeah, so it's also newer. Another thing you might want to do is use external storage for artifacts, so like Nexus, Artifactory, or something else. Put it all there. One thing to keep in mind, if you are going to run Docker containers on your a host or a slave, make sure you're not overtaxing it. You know, it's good practice to limit the use of memory, CPU usage on the container itself when you run it in your job, but it's hard to enforce. So you can easily slow it down. Maybe at least just specify the max memory.
Also specify the max memory of your JVM.
Yes.
Because the Java looks at the system memory and not on the memory that's provided to the container. So if your container only has 1 gigabyte and your system has a lot, then it will never reach the garbage collector, for example.
Just remember those things. Probably human. Another thing with the stage view, if you change one of the stage names, it's going to swipe everything else after that out. You'll lose your history. So a lot of times you might have conditional builds and you skip some stages. So what we're doing right now internally is we're just, when we skip a certain stage, we just say, just print out the stage and just put an echo out to the log saying we're skipping because it's not needed. Just so we have a consistent view. So it's kind of So maybe labels, the new labels better. I don't know.
Maybe it's install it plan.
But yeah, that's all I wanted to cover.
How
Questions?
Have you ever compared Jenkins with pipelines to other options like Go, CD, or Concord CI?
In the past, we looked at Go, but I liked Jenkins before. More familiar with it, and the whole organization is Jenkins, so it's hard to switch to that.
Go is more pretty.
Yeah, it has a lot better GUI. But yeah, I haven't compared the other one.
I think the difference is, I don't think Go actually uses a coding language. It's more like a XML kind of description of the steps that it stores. You still need to do the designs while you
For Go.cd, they are working on something similar like pipelines for Jenkins, but it's not there yet.
it's not
What will happen with existing job if you rerun cd job?
So you can have policies say replace it, like update it, or remove it, and it's based on job DSL configuration. So one thing I also did with my Jenkins Docker, I created a Jenkins file, and I'll show you quick. So here, check out, build a container, deploy it, and it also generates the template. So if there's some changes for updating versions or new job configurations, it'll do that. So here, I added another manual step. Do you want to update the existing jobs? So I'll just say proceed, and it's going to apply. Like this. So this is also where I use stash and stash. It's going to process the DSL script and update. And if you look at, you can say, okay, sorry, updated. Usually it says where it came from, C job, but no, I updated it from there. Previously it said it was from the initial C job. So that's kind of self-contained Jenkins. It's its own job.
Is there any way to define what's going to be the build number job that's going to start from? Because for example, if you keep on building your builds, are going to always start with the same version of number.
There are build number plugin. Could use that.
We changed, we give every build a git. So if you switch the Jenkins host, you lose the build number normally. So we have the number as the git tag, and we do this, take the number and close one.
You can also publish your builds to Artifactory if you want it.
Yeah.
And use it that way. Yeah, there's no easy way to set it. So keep track of it.
You make your build number independent of Jenkins.
Yeah.
That would be the solution.
Yeah.
Can jobs automatically be deleted? For example, for pull requests or branches?
Yeah, the pull request branches are supposed to be automatically cleaned up, but I don't think GitHub implementation with multi-branch is working correctly, because in the documentation it says it will clean it up once the merge request is closed. But I have not seen that, and if I look at the logs, it says it's still active. So I don't know if it's relying on GitHub the plugin to do a webhook to say delete or something, I don't know. But with GitLab it should be straightforward.
For the branch pipeline, can you open it up just to see the? No, just the result, the pipeline itself.
Oh,
So if you have like 20 branches, do you get some
you'll get a
the
different
name, different name?
different name. With GitLab, it's changing the branch name to PR3 or PR4, whatever the pull request number is. But for GitLab, it should actually be branch name.
Yeah.
Because it by default it uses the branch name for
So it
the.
creates like a folder with all the jobs of that branch, so you don't get everything cluttered and
Yes.
Okay.
And you can see all the builds for that branch.
Yes.
It just keeps on building for every commit or something. Yeah.
Yeah, you can do it based on commits or merge requests, changes to merge requests. Yeah, anything else?